He slammed the door against the rising wind, one hand braced on the frame, the other catching her before she could step back into the storm. Then, without meeting her eyes, he said, "Stay with me tonight." And she had to decide whether he was offering shelter or asking for something she couldn't afford to give. The wind hit the cabin hard enough to rattle the tin cups on the shelf. Naomi kept her hand on the latch anyway, fingers tight, eyes fixed on the narrow strip of dark outside. Behind her, boots crossed the floor once, then stopped. "Road's washed out past the ridge," he said, voice low, steady. She turned just enough to see him set his hat down, not coming closer, not blocking her way. Rain slipped through the cracks, tapping against the boards like a warning. Naomi drew a breath, then let the latch fall back into place. "Just for the night," she said, though neither of them moved. "If you were standing there, would you trust him or keep walking?" The wind came hard across Red Basin that night, dragging dust low along the ground like something alive. It rattled the loose plank on the side of Silas Rourke's cabin and shoved at the door until the hinges groaned. Then the door swung open. Silas stepped in first, broad shoulders filling the frame, one arm braced against the wood, the other holding a woman upright more by will than strength. His shirt was dark at the shoulder, wet and clinging. Not rain. Blood. He shut the door with his heel. The latch caught. The storm dropped to a muffled howl outside. "Sit," he said. His voice was low, rough, like it had been used too much and trusted too little. The woman pulled away just enough to stand on her own. She didn't argue, didn't ask. She moved toward the chair by the small table, boots leaving a faint trail of dust across the floorboards. Naomi Bennett set her bag down first. Then she turned back. "You're bleeding through the seam," she said. Silas glanced down like it was news to him. He rolled his shoulder once. The movement tightened his jaw, but nothing else showed. "It'll hold." "It won't." She crossed the room before he could answer. Not fast, not hesitant either, just direct. Her fingers found the edge of his shirt, paused once, then tore the seam open along the shoulder. The fabric gave with a soft rip. Silas didn't step back. The lamplight caught the cut. Not deep, but wide. A horn, maybe, or a bad turn in the dark. Naomi reached for the kettle by the stove. It was still warm. She poured what was left into a tin basin, dipped a cloth, wrung it once. "You've got clean thread?" she asked. He nodded toward a shelf without looking. She found it. Needle wrapped in paper. Thread tied off twice. Used, but kept. Good enough. She came back to him and pressed the cloth to his shoulder. He drew in a breath through his nose. Didn't move otherwise. "You always let strangers cut into you like this?" he asked. "You always bring strangers into your house bleeding?" she said. That earned the smallest shift at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. Something close. Outside, the wind hit the cabin again. Harder this time. Sand tapped against the window like thrown gravel. Naomi worked steady, cleaned the cut, threaded the needle. Her hands didn't shake, not even when the cabin creaked or the storm rose. Silas watched her once, just once, then looked away. "You headed somewhere?" he asked after a while. "Was. Town's 2 hours back the way you came." "I know." She tied off the last stitch and cut the thread with a small knife from her pocket, wiped the blade clean on her sleeve before closing it. "Don't lift anything heavier than a saddle for a few days," she said, "and keep it dry." Silas pulled the shirt back over his shoulder, slow this time, careful without showing it. Noted. The room went quiet after that. Naomi rinsed the cloth, set the basin aside, then reached for her bag. She slung it over her shoulder and moved toward the door. Her hand touched the latch. Behind her, the floorboard shifted under Silas's weight. Just one step, no rush. "Storm's not letting up," he said. She didn't turn. "I've walked worse." Another gust slammed the side of the cabin. The door shuddered in her hand. Fine dust slipped through the cracks and settled along the floor. Silas stopped a few feet behind her. Not close enough to crowd. Not far enough to pretend he didn't care. "Stay with me tonight." The words came quieter than anything else he'd said. No edge. No command in them. Naomi's fingers tightened on the latch. She waited. The wind filled the silence, pushed at the walls, found every gap it could. "You don't owe me," he added. She looked down at the wood grain under her hand. The latch. The worn spot where it had been opened 1,000 times. Then she let go. Not fast, not slow, just enough for the metal to settle back into place. Naomi turned. Her eyes moved over the room once. The stove, the narrow bed, the extra chair by the wall. Silas hadn't moved. She walked past him without a word and set her bag back down where it had been. Then she took the chair again. Outside, the storm kept going. Inside, neither of them spoke. The lamp burned low. The wind pressed against the walls. Somewhere in the distance, a loose gate knocked against its post in a slow, steady rhythm. Silas sat on the edge of the bed, one elbow on his knee, watching the floor. Naomi leaned back in the chair, eyes open, listening to the storm. No promises were made, no questions asked. But the door stayed closed, and she didn't leave. Morning came thin and gray, the storm blown east, leaving the land scraped clean. Dust lay in soft drifts along the fence line. The sky looked washed out, like it hadn't decided on a color yet. Naomi woke to the sound of wood splitting. She sat up slow in the chair, her back stiff, her coat still wrapped around her. The lamp had burned out sometime before dawn. The cabin smelled faintly of coffee and damp earth. Through the window, she could see Silas in the yard. He stood by the chopping block, shirt pulled tight across his shoulders, sleeves rolled uneven. The axe rose and fell in steady rhythm. Clean strikes. No wasted motion. The bandage at his shoulder held, though the fabric around it had darkened again. He didn't look toward the house. Naomi stood, folded the coat once, set it on the chair. She moved quietly, like the place might not be hers to wake. The kettle was cold. A tin cup sat beside it, turned upside down. She righted it, poured what little water remained, set it near the stove. The door opened without warning. Silas stepped in, bringing the cold with him. He set the axe by the wall, wiped his hands on a rag, then stopped when he saw her at the stove. "You're up," he said. "So are you." He nodded once, reached past her without touching, took the coffee pot, poured into the cup she'd set out. He drank standing, eyes on the window. A shadow crossed the yard. Hoofbeats followed. Slow, measured. Silas set the cup down. "Stay here," he said. Naomi didn't answer. He stepped out onto the porch. The boards creaked under his weight. Naomi moved to the window instead, just enough to see without being seen. A man sat his horse by the gate, hat pulled low, coat buttoned despite the warming day. Sheriff Cole Maddox. He didn't dismount right away, just looked over the place like he was counting things that weren't there. Silas walked out to meet him. They spoke low. Naomi couldn't catch the words at first. Then the wind shifted. "Name's been mentioned," the sheriff said. Silas didn't move. "She's inside?" Maddox asked. A pause. "She came through the storm," Silas said. "That's all." Maddox tipped his head like he didn't quite buy it. "Funny thing about storms," he said. "They bring things in folks weren't expecting." Naomi stepped back from the window. She picked up her bag, set it on the table, opened it. Papers, folded tight, tied with twine. A pencil worn down to the nub. She checked them once, then closed the bag again. The door opened. Maddox stepped in first this time. He removed his hat, more out of habit than respect. His eyes moved across the room, landed on Naomi, stayed there. "Ma'am," he said. She met his gaze, didn't offer her name. "Sheriff," she said. Silas came in behind him, stood by the door, not blocking it, not inviting anyone through. "There's been talk," Maddox went on. "Kansas side. Missing funds from a cattle account. Bookkeeper gone the same week." Naomi rested her hand on the back of the chair. "People talk," she said. "They do." He glanced at her bag. "Sometimes they're right." Silas shifted his weight. The floorboard gave a soft creak. "She's not staying," he said. Naomi looked at him then, just for a second. Maddox watched that. "Road's still soft from the storm," the sheriff said, "and Mr. Pierce rode in this morning. He's got an interest in how things settle out here." Naomi knew the name. Harlan Pierce owned half the grazing land south of the ridge. If he was asking questions, they wouldn't stop easy. Maddox put his hat back on. "I'm not taking you in today," he said to Naomi, "but I'll be back through. Best you don't disappear on me." He turned to Silas. "Keep things straight here." Then he left. The horse moved off slow, hoofbeats faded. The cabin went quiet again. Naomi closed her bag, tied the twine tighter than before. "I'll go," she said. Silas didn't answer right away. He walked to the table, picked up her bag, set it back down where it had been the night before. "Pierce will have men on the road," he said. "You won't make it past the bend before someone stops you. That's not your concern. It is if it happens on my land." She held his gaze, not challenging, not yielding either. "I don't work for you," she said. Silas nodded once. "Then don't," he said. "Work the books. Stay until Maddox circles back. Then go where you want." Naomi's eyes flicked to the shelf, to the ledger sitting there, thick with dust along the spine. "You keep records?" she asked. "Enough." She stepped past him, took the ledger down, opened it. Pages uneven, numbers written heavy, some crossed out, some not. She turned 2 pages, 3. "These aren't balanced," she said. Silas leaned against the wall, arms folded. "I know how many head I've got," he said. "That's not the same as proving it." He didn't argue. Naomi closed the book, set it on the table. "I do the books," she said. "I eat what I cook. I don't answer questions that aren't asked right." Silas watched her a moment. Then he nodded. "Fair." That night they ate in the same room, not at the same time. He took his plate to the porch. She stayed at the table. The lamp burned between them, casting light that didn't quite reach the corners. Later, when the wind picked up again, Naomi left the lamp lit. Silas came in after dark, boots quiet on the boards. He paused by the table, looked at the flame, then at the chair she'd left pushed back just a little. He didn't say anything. He just set his hat down, poured what was left of the coffee, and drank it standing. Across the room, Naomi lay on the narrow bed, eyes closed but not asleep. Between them, the space felt the same. But it wasn't. Not quite. And neither of them said why. The days settled into a pattern that didn't need naming. Silas rode out before the light cleared the ridge. The gate would creak once, then fall quiet again. Naomi would already be awake, seated at the table with the ledger open, pencil pressed between her fingers like it had weight to it. She rewrote numbers slowly, line by line. Ink scratched over old entries, cleaner this time, tighter. She kept a stack of receipts beside her. Feed orders, tack repairs, a folded note from a buyer down in Laramie. Dates didn't match. Counts didn't line up. By the third morning, she stopped rewriting. She waited. Silas came in near dusk, dust up to his knees, hat pulled low. He set a coil of rope by the door and paused when he saw the ledger laid open in the center of the table. Naomi didn't look up. "You sold 8 head on the 15th, she said, "but you marked 10 gone." Silas set his hat down. "2 broke fence," he said. "Never made it to the buyer." "You didn't note that." "I remember it." Naomi tapped the page with the end of her pencil. "Memory doesn't settle accounts." He stood there a second longer than needed. Then he crossed the room, leaned over the table, close enough that she could smell sun and leather, but not close enough to crowd her. He looked at the numbers, not the words. "Fix it," he said. Naomi nodded once. Not agreement, just acknowledgement. That was how it went. Until Victor Hale came up the road. They saw the dust first, a long, low line moving steady from the south. Not wind this time. Wheels. Silas was in the yard, checking a loose hinge on the side gate. Naomi stood on the porch, one hand resting on the post, watching the shape take form. 2 horses, 1 wagon. Victor stepped down before the wheels stopped turning. Coat clean, boots polished enough to catch the light. He carried himself like the land already answered to him. "Rourke," he called, not raising his voice. Silas straightened, wiped his hands on his jeans. "Hale." Victor's eyes moved past him, found Naomi on the porch, stayed there a moment longer than polite. "So that's her," he said. Naomi didn't step back. Victor climbed the steps without asking. His boots left no dust behind. He stopped just short of the doorway, as if the line mattered only because he chose to see it. "Word travels," he said, "even out here." Silas didn't answer. Victor took a folded paper from his coat, unopened, just for show. "Sheriff's asking questions," he went on. "Names tied to missing funds. Folks get nervous when numbers don't add up." Naomi came down the steps. "If you've got something to say," she said, "you can say it straight." Victor smiled, not warm. "I prefer things in writing," he said. "Less chance of misunderstanding." He flicked the paper once with his finger, then slid it back into his coat. "I'm making an offer, Rourke. Land's worth more this year than it was last. Storm took out 2 smaller outfits west of you. Pressure's building." Silas glanced at the fence line, then back. "Not selling." Victor's smile thinned. "Everyone sells," he said. "Just a matter of when." Naomi folded her arms. "You came all this way to talk about land?" she asked. Victor looked at her again, measured this time. "I came to see what kind of trouble walked onto it." Silas stepped forward then. Not fast, just enough to close the space. "She works here," he said. "That's all you need to know." Victor held his gaze, long enough to make it a point. "Careful what you tie yourself to," he said quietly. "Some things don't wash off." He stepped back, turned, and walked to the wagon. Didn't look over his shoulder again. The wheels rolled out slow. Dust followed. Silas stood where he was. Naomi didn't move either. The wind picked up just enough to stir the loose dirt at their feet. "Didn't ask you to speak for me," she said. Silas looked at her. "Didn't think I had to ask." "I don't need it." He held her eyes a second longer, then another. "Those men in town," he said. "They don't know you." "Neither do you." The words landed harder than she meant them to. She knew it the second they left her mouth. Silas's jaw tightened. Not much, just enough to show. "I know what I see," he said. "And what's that?" "A woman who won't run when it gets hard." Naomi shook her head. "That's not yours to decide." Silas's hand came down on the table behind him when he stepped back inside. The wood cracked sharp under the weight. Not broken, just loud enough to carry. "Enough," he said. The word filled the room, then dropped. Naomi went still. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she turned, walked past him, and closed her door. The latch clicked soft. Silas stood alone in the main room, the ledger still open, the page she'd marked waiting. He didn't touch it. Night came slow. The wind shifted again. Cooler this time, carrying the smell of dry grass. Silas sat by the table, hat in his hands. He turned it once, then again. From the other side of the wall, he heard it. Soft at first, then clearer. A breath caught wrong. Another. He stood. Crossed the room. His hand settled on the door. He didn't knock. Didn't open it either. He stayed there, listening. Not moving. After a while, the sound eased. Not gone, just quieter. Silas let his hand fall. He stepped back, took his hat, set it on the table instead. Then he sat down and waited for morning to come, without saying a word. It came slower than most days. The light eased in through the window, pale and thin, settling over the table where the ledger still lay open. Dust hung in the air, barely moving. Outside, the wind had dropped. The land felt like it was holding its breath. Silas was already up. The stove was lit. Coffee sat warming, untouched. He stood by the door, one hand resting against the frame, looking out across the pasture. Naomi stepped out of her room without sound. Her eyes were steady, not red, not swollen. Whatever had broken the night before, she'd put it back together before dawn. Silas didn't turn. "There's a break in the north fence," he said. "Cattle pushed through sometime before sunrise." Naomi moved past him, tying her hair back with a strip of cloth. "You're going after them?" "Have to." She nodded once, took a cup, poured coffee, left it on the table where he'd been sitting the night before. Silas noticed, didn't comment. He stepped out. The horse was already saddled, rope coiled tight. He mounted without looking back and rode north. The sun climbed slow. Naomi worked inside, not hurried, not distracted. She finished the ledger page from the night before, corrected the count, added a note in the margin in small, neat writing. 2 lost to break, not sold. She paused, then underlined it once. Outside, the hours stretched. By noon, the sky had shifted. Clouds rolled in from the west, low and fast. The air changed with them, cooler, sharper. Naomi stepped onto the porch, eyes scanning the ridge. Nothing. The first thunder came distant, then closer. By late afternoon, the rain hit, hard. It drove across the land in slanted sheets, flattening the grass, turning the dust to slick mud. The gate slammed once, then again. Naomi pulled it shut and tied it fast. Still no sign of Silas. The light began to fade. Then she heard it. Hoofbeats, heavy, uneven. She stepped into the yard as the horse broke through the rain, sides heaving, foam at its mouth. Silas leaned forward in the saddle, one hand gripping the reins, the other hanging loose. He didn't dismount clean. His boot slipped on the stirrup. He caught himself on the saddle, dropped hard to the ground, breath leaving him in a rough sound. Naomi was already there. "You're bleeding again," she said. He gave a short shake of his head like it didn't matter. "Got them turned back," he said. "Fence'll need fixing come morning." He took a step, stumbled. Naomi caught his arm, not gentle, not careful either, just enough to keep him upright. "Inside," she said. He didn't argue. The cabin filled with the sound of rain hammering the roof. Naomi moved fast. Kettle on the stove, cloth laid out, the same needle, the same thread. Silas sat this time, didn't try to stand through it. His shirt came off slower than before. The old stitch had torn. Blood had soaked through the bandage, spread along his side. Naomi didn't ask how. She cleaned it, reset the stitch. Her hands moved steady, though the storm rattled the walls and the door strained against its latch. Silas watched her once. "You should have gone," he said. She didn't look up. "Road would have been worse in this," she said. "That's not what I meant." The thread pulled tight. She tied it off. "I know," she said. Silas let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The storm pressed in harder. Thunder cracked close enough to shake the glass in the window. Naomi set the needle aside. She stood, reached for her bag. Silas's hand came up then. Not fast, not forceful, just enough to stop her without touching. "Stay with me tonight." The words came rough, quieter than the storm, but heavier. Naomi looked at him. Rain ran down the window behind him. Light flickered across his face. He didn't look away. "I won't be asking twice," he said. It wasn't a threat. It was the truth. Naomi set her bag down, pulled the chair closer to the stove, sat. Silas leaned back against the wall, eyes half closed, one hand resting over the bandage. For a while there was only the sound of rain. Then he spoke again. Slower this time. "My father used to say a man doesn't need anyone," he said. "Said it enough. You start believing it." Naomi didn't answer. Silas gave a short breath that might have been a laugh. Turns out he was wrong. The fire shifted in the stove. Wood popped soft. Naomi leaned forward just a little. Not enough to be seen as comfort. Enough to hear him better. "I don't like quiet," he said after a while. "Not that kind." She looked at him then. He didn't open his eyes. "I know," she said. That was all. The storm passed sometime after midnight. Morning came clearer. Too clear. The sound of hooves cut through the still air. Naomi was at the table when the knock came. Hard. 3 times. Silas stood before she did. Crossed the room, opened the door. Sheriff Maddox stood there. 2 men behind him this time. "We've got a warrant," he said. Silas didn't step aside. "Name?" he asked. "Naomi Bennett." The room went still. Naomi stood slowly. Silas spoke first. "If she's done wrong," he said, "it's on me." Maddox looked at him, long and hard. "That so?" Silas didn't blink. Naomi stared at him, not understanding, not yet. But something shifted. For the first time since she'd stepped into that cabin, someone had chosen her side, without asking, without knowing everything, and without stepping back. The room held still after Silas spoke. Sheriff Maddox shifted his weight, eyes moving from Silas to Naomi, then back again. The 2 men behind him stayed near the door, hands loose at their sides, waiting for something to tip. Naomi stepped forward. "That's not how this works," she said. Silas didn't look at her. "It is today," he said. Maddox studied him a moment longer. Then he took a slow breath and lowered the paper in his hand. "I'm not hauling either of you in without something I can put on record," he said. "Not yet." He turned to Naomi. "You got anything you want to say before I ride back through?" Naomi held his gaze. Her fingers tightened once at her side, then eased. "I didn't take the money," she said, "but I signed off on a ledger that wasn't clean." The words settled heavy. Silas's head turned just enough to look at her. Maddox nodded like he'd been expecting something close to it. "Why?" he asked. Naomi glanced at the table, at the ledger she'd been working through, the pages she'd straightened, the lines she'd fixed. "Family was going to lose their herd," she said. "Winter was coming early. Numbers got shifted. I let it pass." That cost someone else, Mo, Maddox said. It did. Silas said nothing. Maddox folded the paper again, slower this time. I'll need proof one way or the other, he said. You've got a day, maybe two. After that, I don't get to wait. He stepped back toward the door, paused. Don't leave, he added. Then he was gone. The horse moved off. The yard went quiet. Naomi stood where she was. Silas crossed the room, picked up the ledger, flipped through the pages she'd rewritten. His eyes moved over the numbers without reading them the way she did. Still, he saw enough. Victor's been moving counts, she said. Shifting loss onto smaller outfits. Makes his numbers look clean. Silas stopped at a page near the middle, one she hadn't touched yet. And mine? He asked. You've been losing more than you marked, she said, but not where you thought. He closed the book. What do you need? Naomi blinked once like she hadn't expected the question. Receipts, she said. Original tallies. Anything you didn't throw away. Silas nodded, moved to the back room, came out with a tin box dented at the corner, set it on the table. Everything's in there. Naomi opened it. Paper folded and refolded, old ink, names half faded, dates scratched in the margins. She sorted through it quick at first, then slower. Sit, she said. Silas did. They worked without speaking much. She lined up entries, matched numbers, crossed out what didn't hold, marked what did. The pencil wore down further. She sharpened it with the small knife, careful not to waste any lead. Time slipped. By late afternoon, the light had turned gold through the window. Naomi leaned back, closed her eyes once, then opened them again. It's enough, she said. Silas watched her. You sure? No, she said, but it's what we've got. She gathered the papers, tied them tight. I'll take this into town, she said. Silas stood. No. Naomi looked at him. You show your face there alone, he went on. Hale'll have you signing whatever he wants before Maddox even sees you. That's my problem. It is if it lands back here. Silence stretched between them. Naomi picked up her bag. I'm not staying for this, she said. You've done enough. She walked past him, opened the door. The air outside had cooled. Evening settling in. She didn't look back. The road into town cut through a stretch of low brush and hard ground. Naomi kept her pace steady. Not fast, not slow. The tied bundle of papers sat tight against her side. She heard the wagon before she saw it. It rolled out from behind a stand of trees, blocking the road ahead. Victor Hale stepped down, same as before. Clean, certain. I was hoping you'd come this way, he said. Naomi stopped. I don't have business with you, she said. Victor smiled. On the contrary, he said. You've got exactly what I need. He nodded toward the papers. You hand those over, he went on. Sign a statement, and I make sure the sheriff sees things the right way. Naomi didn't move. And if I don't? Victor's smile thinned. Then you spend a winter answering questions you won't like. The wind shifted, carried the sound of hooves. Both of them turned. Silas came over the rise at a steady pace, not rushed, not hesitant. Just there. He rode straight up, stopped between Naomi and the wagon. Didn't look at Victor. Give me the papers, he said. Naomi hesitated. Then she handed them over. Silas unfolded the bundle, held it out just enough for Victor to see. These don't belong to you, Victor said. Silas's gaze lifted. They do now. Victor took a step forward. You don't know what you're stepping into. Silas didn't move. I know enough. He turned his head just slightly. Sheriff's on his way, he said. Victor's eyes flicked past him. Maddox rode in moments later, 2 men behind him again. Silas handed the papers over. Start there, he said. Maddox took them, looked once at Naomi, then at Victor. The silence that followed felt different, heavier. Victor stepped back first. This isn't settled, he said. No, Maddox answered, but it's moving. Victor climbed into the wagon, drove off without another word. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Naomi walked beside the horse for the part of it, then rode the rest. When they reached the yard, the light had faded to blue. Silas dismounted, took the saddle off and practiced motions. Naomi stood by the porch. You didn't have to come, she said. He didn't look at her. I did. She stepped inside. The ledger sat where they'd left it, open to the last page. Blank. Silas followed, stopped by the table. He slid the book toward her. Naomi looked down. Then she took the pencil. Her hand paused once above the page. Then she wrote, Accounts, Rourke Ranch, her name beneath it. Clean, steady. She set the pencil down. Outside, the wind moved softer now, just enough to stir the grass. They sat on the porch after. Not close, not far. The sky stretched wide above them, stars coming in slow. Silas rested his hands on his knees. Stay again tonight? He said. Naomi didn't answer. She didn't stand either, and that was enough. Out there, in a place like Red Basin, nothing came easy. Not the land, not the work, and certainly not the kind of trust that lets one person stay when walking away might be simpler. Silas had spent most of his life carrying weight without asking for help. Naomi had spent hers learning how to stand on her own, even when it cost her more than she could say out loud. They didn't fix each other. They didn't try to. They just stayed. And sometimes, that's the hardest choice a person can make. Because staying means facing what's been broken. It means letting someone see you when you're not steady. It means risking that the ground you build together might not hold. But it also means something else. It means giving a place and a person a chance to become something better than what came before. So maybe the question isn't whether love shows up the way we expect. Maybe it's whether we're willing to recognize it when it asks us to stay. If you found yourself in Naomi's place, would you have walked away, or would you have stayed? And if stories like this sit with you a little longer than expected, there are more waiting just ahead. Quiet ones, strong ones, the kind that don't rush, but still find their way home.